Hi everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed the keynote, a super interesting chat between Amrita and Beth, all about inclusivity and how they actually portray themselves and your true self at work. I think it's such an interesting topic. I think a lot of people have that barrier at work. They need to be professional and they don't show their true selves. So super interesting talk there. Just letting you know, the Wellness Engaged team are available if you want to have a chat about your organizational corporate strategy. So do feel free to reach out to us at wellness at eventmindpro.com. So next to the Relearn stage, we have Michelle Raymond, which I'm super excited about. Michelle is a HR consultant and a trainer at the People's Partner. Burnout is something we've definitely all experienced. I know I absolutely have, hence why I've got a couple of spots right now. Michelle will be discussing spotting the signs of burnout in remote workers and also how to identify the indicators so you don't actually get to that stage. So welcome to the stage, Michelle. Super excited for your talk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rianne. Thank you so much to the Wellness Engaged team. They have done a fabulous job, absolutely fabulous job. It's not easy putting something like this together, and having spoken at many other virtual conferences, I know that the work that goes on behind the scenes. But I just want to impress that this is a really, really pertinent theme. It's a very, very important subject. And I'm coming from a HR perspective where I go into businesses and I see the detriment of staff who are on their last legs. So I have a presentation that I want to share with you, and I'll be speaking mainly to other HR people like myself. I'll be speaking to the operations managers, the leaders, the CEOs, the managing directors, but also to the employees. So if you have any questions along the way, I want you to put them in the chat. I won't be able to see the chat while my presentation is live, but I will come off and be able to read the chat. And I do have another screen here. So if you see me looking down there, you know I'm just making sure that I'm not missing any vital information. So let us get started. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. So I'm just going to check in the comments that you can see Michelle is live. Brilliant. Rianne, could you just let me know that you can see the screen before I commence, and then we will get going straight away. Awesome. We are good to go. I love this because you just never know with tech issues. So as you know, we're talking about spotting the signs of burnout in remote workers. And I specifically want to blend in remote workers, but also workers who have come into the workplace, because there's different things you might be able to see at different times. So I just want you to be aware of that. So just a little bit about who I am and what I do. As you know, my name is Michelle Raymond. I'm a HR consultant and a visibility strategist. I'm also a trainer, and I go into different organizations all over and ensuring that they are doing the right things by their staff, because that's really important, doing the right things by their staff. I've been featured in a number of magazines and international publications talking about staff well-being, talking about race fluency, talking about leadership and management training. So that's just a little bit about me, and the reason why I wanted to make sure that you saw that, so you know where I'm coming from. So I'm going to be bringing this to you from a HR perspective, so you can see what we do on our end and what we need to be looking for. So as I said before, the challenge here is that employee burnout is on an all-time high. We've never been here before. So there's no case study. We don't know how to act. So companies have gone through peaks and troughs. You know, we've had the recession, there's been other fallouts, but we've never been in this period before. So it's going to be so challenging for organizations to know what to do, how to deal with this pandemic that the health authority has noted as the health epidemic of the 21st century. We have seen employees lose loved ones. We have seen employees have friends and family who have been sick, who have been hospitalized. We have seen employees themselves go through this period. So we know that we've never been here before. And we know that because this is a new era, it's a new epidemic, what can organizations do to spot the signs so that they can be in a position to identify the indicators and do something beforehand rather than doing something in retrospect? Because the world of work has changed considerably. We are working longer at home. We are in our home. Now your workplace has an internal view of your front room, of your office, of your conservatory. They see the dog running behind you. They see the children. And as employees, they have an extra burden. How do I show up with all of this thing happening in the background behind me? How can I show up and be totally committed to work when now there is a work-life blur? There's no longer work-life balance. It's called work-life blur. And how do I perform at my optimum with all that's going on around me? So let me show you some stats. So this was taken from Gallup, I think in 2019. And the research showed that 76% of employees experience burnout at some time or another. That's 76%. And this was done in 2019. I've not managed to dig up the stats for 2021, but if in 2019, pre-COVID times, this is what we were experiencing, can you imagine that figure right now? Can you imagine what's going through people's minds? And when I talk about burnout, I am talking about the physical burnout, the depression, the exhaustion, the fatigue, but also the mental, the cognitive weariness. And this is what me as HR, as you, as employers, as CEOs, as MDs, as operations managers, as training advisors, these are the things we need to bear in mind. So I want to show you this. This is the Yerkes-Dodson Human Performance Stress Curve. Because I want to reinforce that not all stress is bad. We know that we want to get to that optimum performance where a level of stress helps energize the employees because they know they have a deadline to reach. They know they have a target to be met. So that stress helps them to pump them forward. And it helps them to keep focused and work feels effortless. When we reach that optimal performance, you get the very best out of your staff. And for employees, you do your best. You know you're on the trajectory to get a promotion, to be promoted or get a pay rise. But then, as you can see down to the right of the bell curve, when we pass that optimal performance, and then, and then we go down, we notice that fatigue starts to happen because you've got too many stress levels, exhaustion, ill health. All of these things start to take place within our bodies. So we can see where the stress is good and then when things start to go wrong. So let me show you some of the signs that we as employers, we as HR need to be looking out for. And we can notice this in our remote staff, but also in staff who are very much present in the building with you. There may be a general lack of interest. They're just not hugely engaged as they were before. What's going on? You'll notice that they're not showing up as usual. They're not contributing as much as they should. And I want you as employers to see these as signs, as indicators of burnout and not as underperformance. Because me as a HR person, what I see is people come to me and say, Michelle, this person's underperforming. They're the lack of interest. They're always ill. They're forgetting things. But I have to remind them, this might not just be underperformance. There might be something else that's going on in the background. This might be the onset of burnout. So I say this and I share this to remind you, not everything is underperformance or lack of capability. So you don't need to go to HR and say, this person's underperforming. We need to performance them out of the business. There might be something going on. And this is why I want you to really take note of these slides, so you know the difference between the burnout and what's underperformance and what's capability or what's disciplinary. There is a vast difference. Then there's depression. They just don't seem to be energized. They find issues in things. They get irritable with other colleagues and their family, their co-workers. The slightest thing gets them upset. And it's not just one thing becomes the burnout. It's an amalgamation of all of these things. And working hard, feeling drained without higher production. Yeah? When you have somebody who is actually, they are showing up. Every time you have a Zoom session, a Microsoft Teams session, they're there. But for some reason, you're not seeing the outcome. What's going on? There's a disconnect. There's a disconnect. And then you have the other type of employees that are online for long hours. You might have a system where you can see when they've logged on, and they're on from 9 o'clock to 6. Now you have to remember, when people are working remotely, the working times, they change, they adjust. If you're in person, working your 9 to 6 is normal. But when you're online, it's a very different dynamic. So if you see that someone's working online for long hours, that's a sign that you need to be mindful of. They appear fatigued during video calls. How many times have you had a Zoom session, Microsoft Teams, and you've seen people when they're just slumped in their chair? They're not moving forward towards the screen. They're not engaged, but they're very tired. And oftentimes they look tired, they appear tired, and they don't even show up on camera. They don't log off to take breaks. They think, because you cannot see me, that notion of presenteeism is no longer there. I have to put in the hours, and they don't take time off for their breaks. These are all signs of burnout. Keeping the camera off during video calls. Now, I believe this can be a sign, but I also believe that this is also a solution that employers can encourage, that you don't always have to show up on camera, that we can believe that you're still committed to the cause, still committed to getting your work done, but sometimes the environment might not be right. So we're going to talk about that shortly. And they may be staying silent and not engaging at all. They're not contributing. When you go around and asking them, what have you done? What are you working on? And they're repeating the same answers that they did last week. All of these signs are things that are showing that they're probably at the edge of fatigue, of illness, of burnout, of depression, and not underperformance, not incapability. And there may be a decrease in productivity as well. That they're just not, they have not got the energy to produce at that high performance that you know that they usually get. And it's different now. So these are the signs of burnout. But as I said before, that for organizations to take a step forward to deal with these burnouts, the culture of the organization has to shift. There has to be a shift. You cannot be doing the same things that you were doing before COVID now. You cannot do this because the world of work has changed. People have changed. So your policies have to change. Your procedures have to change. So if you're in business and you have not reviewed your policies, you have to review your policies. You should have a policy of burnout. There needs to be a policy or procedure on how to deal with wellness If you do not have these in place, I would encourage you to find someone like myself or somebody else who can take a stock check of what's currently happening within your business and create a policy in alignment to your brand, to your messaging, but they are also in alignment to the needs of your employees. So let's look at what a great workplace culture looks like that puts the staff first. So this was adapted by Dr. Natalia Pert, who talked about the cultures and the building blocks of organizations that want to put their staff first. So let's look at each of them in part. So let's look at first the psychological contract. Now, in HR, we talk about the psychological contract all the time. So we talk about the physical, which are the terms and conditions, your statement of particulars, which you need to get within 2 days, within the first day of you joining your organization. But there is another contract called the psychological contract. And this contract talks about it's the agreements that take place that are not stated in your main contract. This is about building trust. And we heard from the earlier speakers that trust is the foundation of great relationships. So let's look at your workplace has to have a psychological contract that we believe that we will do our best by you. It's rooted in your core values. We believe that we may have our standard contract, but we as a company are going to do whatever it takes to put you first. And that means your wellness, your well-being, your mental capacity, your physical capacity. This is what we're talking about. It's about being transparent, and it signals great relationships. So for your culture, for your company to have a great working culture, to make sure that everybody is well cared for from the top to the bottom, you need a psychological agreement. The next area is the culture of care. And when we have a culture of care, we remove the stresses. We remove let's put it this way, we remove the need to have to show up on camera. We remove the need to have your cameras on all the time. It's almost like we've replaced being present in the company to showing up on Zoom. And I understand it. As a leader, as a trainer, I know when I'm delivering training, when I'm talking to people, I like to see the squares. I like to see people's faces. But at the same time, I want to be an inclusive leader. An inclusive leader that cares, which means I have to understand not everybody has the background, the smart background. Not everybody is in a conducive environment of learning. Not everybody feels that they look right enough to show up on camera. So let us remove those stresses, managers. Let's not make it, we don't need to make it mandatory that you must show up on camera. Let us reduce the meeting times. When we were working in person, it made sense to have meetings for an hour, but it doesn't make sense now. I would say reduce the time that people are spending online. I'm online now and I've got the camera, I've got lighting, and all of these things put pressure. And if you show up on camera every day with all the lighting, it starts to give you a migraine. And all of that adds to burnout. So we need to be mindful of that. And when I mentioned this in another presentation, and someone said to me, but Michelle, if we don't have them show up on camera on Zoom, what is an alternative? Why don't we go back to those days where we used to pick up the phone and speak to people? As leaders, need to find different ways to engage your staff and actually picking up the phone and having a conversation, finding out where people are, what's working for them, having that safe space where on a Friday, like on a Monday, you'll have your Monday huddle where you're going to talk about what's happening for the week. How about on a Friday? You have the Friday huddle where it's not about work. It's how are you going to look after yourself this weekend? How are you going to put yourself first this weekend? This is what is creating a culture of care. putting the needs of your staff first. And then we have a culture of engagement. This is providing regular feedback, getting to find out from people where they are, what they want, getting them to be part of the solution. Too often, organizations, they will say, we need a wellness program. We need to get an outside person in. And I think, yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm going to say that's great, right? Because I am the outside person. But at the same time, there may be people within the organization that want to contribute to the solution and the resolution of engagement. What can they do? Allow them to be part of the journey in terms of building those engagements. Because happier and engaged staff equal higher productivity. If your staff are not happy, if they don't feel like they're being recognized for the work they do, how can they produce at a high level? Now we're working in this hybrid situation. We have to bear in mind that people who are working remotely, they feel like they have to work even harder to be recognized because they're no longer in front of your face. So how do we do this in a remote work? How do we do this in a remote culture? I would say ensure that every employee is recognized. Ensure that every employee, when they contribute to work, that there is some sort of notification, there is an email newsletter, that there is some sort of notice so that they get recognized, so they don't get left behind. I see a trend of people working from home. They're not feeling fully engaged. So how can you make them feel engaged without them burning out? Those are the things you need to look for. And part of that is the communication. Making sure that there are more touch points throughout the week. Gone are those days that we just have your catch up at the end of the month or your performance appraisals. There's got to be more frequent touch points just to check in. How are you doing? How much work have you got on? How can we divvy up the work so that you don't feel the pressure to do everything? It's about sharing the workload. The next area is culture of innovation. What is culture of innovation? That is growing the team, getting diverse people, getting people from every facet of the organization to contribute to change, allowing people to collaborate, using different ways of people, finding different ways that people can collaborate. There's Slack, there's Microsoft Teams, there's Google Hangouts. Find out what's best for people and not just what's best for the organization. If someone's working from home, if somebody is in Thailand and another person's in Dubai, another person's in England, what's the best way for them to collaborate with each other outside of work? That's going to make them innovate better. That's going to make them more creative for the organization. How can they contribute? We need a process of collaboration. What does that look like? All of these things create a culture that cares about its staff, puts their staff first. And then the last area is the culture of purpose. You want to create a purpose-driven organization where they know the values and they know how to uphold and uplift the principles of the organization. We all want to work for an organization that puts their staff first. We all want to work for an organization where we know the cultures, we know the purpose, we know the values, and one of the values is I care. Does your organization just say it, but you're not living it? You don't have the culture of care. You don't have the psychological contract. You don't have the engagement. You don't have the innovation, but yet your value statement says something different. How are you showing that you care? That burnout matters. That when somebody hasn't shown up on camera, when somebody hasn't delivered a piece of work, it's not underperformance. We need to embed all of these within our organizations. We need to build sustainability. We need to use managers as ambassadors. We need to have employees as ambassadors. That they know that they are working for a company that is committed to change. That the company that they had pre-COVID is no longer the company we have post-COVID. That they can see that there's new policies, that they are now people policies rather than HR policies. They are people that care policies. There's well-being. There's policies around health and wellness, mental capacity. What can we do to reduce your stress and increase your productivity and happiness? So I want to leave you with this quote, and then I want to open up for questions. I have a couple of people that have reached out to me for questions that I'll also share. Company leadership, including executives, HR and management, have a responsibility to employees to model and talk openly about behaviors that reduce stress, prevent burnout, and help employees establish boundaries when working remotely. This is what we have to be doing. We can't just be saying it. We can't just be putting things out on social media or on our company websites, but we are not walking the talk, and we're not talking the walk. We have to do more, companies. Employees, if you see gaps, be unafraid to bring it to the attention of your managers. HR, I need you to listen to these employees. You see, if burnout can lead to so many other things, and we, as a company, we have a responsibility. We have that psychological contract to care for our staff. And it starts from now. It starts from listening to the speakers on today's conference. It starts by taking notes, finding out who can come in, who can help. It starts from today. So if you want to get in touch with me, feel free to do so. These are the ways that you can get in touch with me. You can find me on social media platforms. Reach out to me at Michelle@thepeoplespartner.com. I have a wealth of resources, policies that you can just take and you can implement within your companies. But let it not only be a policy, but make it be a practice. Thank you. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back to the room. And are there any questions? Any questions in the chat? Let's have a look. If there's any questions, I'm just looking in the chat if there are. But I do have a couple of questions, and I'm hoping that they will help with other people. So one of the questions that were posed to me and that was sent before this was, so I talked about being transparent, and somebody had asked, can a company be too transparent? And I will say no, because people buy people. And if a company can say and bravely say that we haven't got it right before, but now we are moving into an era that we're putting people first. So this is going to be a period of change. And we want you to work with us to make it work for you. So that's what transparency is. Holding your hand up and say that we haven't always got it right. We do make mistakes, but we want to create a safe space to be clumsy, a safe space to grow, and a safe space to put your needs first. So I think being transparent is really important. I've got another question here, and the question was, do I have any tips for Zoom fatigue? I did mention about Zoom. One of the things I would definitely do is when you're on Zoom, what you want to try and do is, if you have lots of external lighting, turn off the lights. And if you can be in front of a natural lighting, go for the natural lighting, because it reduces the pressure on your head. what happens that it starts to, when you've got so many lighting and the camera, it starts to give you fatigue. And because we don't want that to then turn into cognitive fatigue, we want to reduce all of those stresses. So I would say where you can come off camera, speak to your managers to find out if it's mandatory to show up on camera, if it's not. But then I will always then admonish you to make use of the chat functionality, because there is this notion that if you're not showing up on camera, you're not engaged. But if you use the chat functionality, they know that you're still totally immersed and engaged in the conversation. So that's one of the things I would definitely ask. Let me just check here if there's any other questions. And I think I had one more. Right, I had one more question, and I'll just answer that, and I think we will be done. The question was, are there any apps or tools that I would recommend for people that are suffering from burnout? So there are a number of tools, and I don't want to recommend any specific ones. There are definitely some great meditation apps. So if you type in meditation apps, there are some mind tool apps as well. But what I would also do, I think with burnout, you need to take time away. But also, I would also tell you to have that space away just to refresh and to recruit. But also, do not neglect the real connection with people. We were not designed to be alone. And I think what's happened with this remote working, that we have had this high intensity of isolation. And we need to, there is safety, there is warmth in just reconnecting with people, talking to people, going out and meeting people. This is what we have lacked. This has had a detrimental impact on our mental well-being. But as now that we can see that now time's moving, that we get into the space where we can start to mingle with people, I want you to take full advantage of this. I would encourage everyone to take full advantage. Go out, go for a walk, be out in the nature, speak to people, connect with people. Real, genuine connections are so underestimated, so underrated. So I would definitely remind you of pre-COVID times when you used to meet and mingle with people. And that's going to really help your mental health and your mental well-being. So with that being said, I think that's it from me. Thank you so much. If you have any other further questions, please find me on the socials. I'm on Twitter at the P Partner on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn under Michelle Raymond. Find me. Let's continue this conversation. It's been an honor to be able to present for you. Hoping that you have a great day for the rest of today's session. Thank you.